Hopefully now you have a pretty good understanding of how technical sampling works. And so now we're going to transition and talk about the sampling that you all already know and love, which is creative resampling, which just means that you're taking files that you've downloaded or that come with a program and you bring them into the computer and you use them to make your music. Now it's up to you whether or not you want to process those files or move them around or stretch them out or repitch them, but that's really going to be the crux of this actual lesson. And we're going to be talking about a really cool concept in the modern digital audio workstations known as non-destructive audio editing. So if you don't know what that means right now, hopefully by the end of the lesson, you will have a good understanding of that and why it is so powerful for working on your music today and getting really creative with it and getting more creative with samples than you ever could before. The first thing we're going to do is just add our samples that we're going to be working with. And these are the samples that you can use for your final track. So in this program, I'm just going to go in here and choose add sound content location. I have all of them loaded up here. We'll have links to everything on the website, so don't worry. You don't have to try and search that and find it, but these are all coming from 99sounds.org, a great website for royalty-free samples. And I stress the word royalty-free because there are a lot of times where you'll download samples and even some sample packs, and they don't make it clear that those samples are actually royalty-free, meaning that you can use them in your music. No problem. You don't have to credit anybody. You don't have to cite anything. They can just be used, and that's just another headache that you don't have to worry about later on. Personally, I think I've downloaded just a few sample packs in my entire life because for the most part, if there's a sound that I need to get, I know that even within the program itself, I have 7,000 samples in here. Chances are what I'm looking for is going to be very close. And then I can take that sound and I can process it and get it where I need to be. I mean, just think about how many possibilities exist with a single kick drum sample and one EQ plugin. I mean, you can make a million different sounds with that. So don't be always looking to try and find that perfect sample for your song, because chances are it doesn't really exist. You're always going to have to do a little bit of something to it. The other thing I like about a lot of times free sample packs and also the samples that come with your program is that they haven't already been really overly processed. Most sample packs you buy, they've really processed all of those files really intensely. So sometimes it can be difficult to then shape those sounds further because they've already been shaped so much, and they really are kind of like finished products. So when you're trying to massage something into place, it doesn't always go as well as maybe you'd like. But that's more of a tangent and aside. Let's jump back on topic here and talk about really the audio track itself. We overlook this, but every single audio track in our DAW, in conjunction with all of the editing features we have, is really as powerful as a technical sampler. So if I go into an instrument track here and I load up the sampler that comes with this program, you're going to see what I mean. So you can see with this sample, we drag and drop our sample like so. We have the ability to choose like a start and end time. And in fact, let's actually drop it in here so that I can make this point even better for you. In most programs, you'll be able to drag and drop. If I wanted, I could also find this same sample by just going in and finding it, but I've already colored it differently, so I know what I want to work with. So I'm just going to grab this guy, drag it, bring it in like so. And the first thing I want to do is just actually make sure this is going to play back normally. So if I listen to it, it's not playing back normally. So I'm going to put it into raw mode here, just consolidate this out, go in, make sure that I'm getting the full sample, and then we'll close this guy back in like so. And now when I go to my sampler, I should be able to drag and drop that in. Okay, so with my sampler here, I'm able to choose the start and end time. So if I want to start later on, I can just drag this over. I can actually set it up to loop somewhere along the way here. So if I just want to start somewhere and then loop over and over, you can hear that looping like so. I have the ability to do some filtering. That's not as exciting. And then if I wanted to, I could actually key track this and play this up and down, meaning that I'd be able to then play different notes on the keyboard. So And then I can, of course, adjust like the envelopes, etc. Right? So hopefully that all makes sense to you with the sampler. Now, in a lot of ways, believe it or not, the editing capabilities of just this audio track using the features over here, using the features down here, using the tools up here is more powerful than this sampler. And a lot of us don't really think about that. So if I take this sound here, I know that I could actually very easily transform some of this into like a bass sound, for example. All right, so what I could do here is I could go in and let's start by putting this into like repitch mode. And I'm just going to chunk this way up so that's going to play slower and lower. Let's see if there's a part that will work. Maybe the beginning will be best for this. Yeah, I'm going to take the beginning part. So I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to chop it out. I'm going to take this and put it on a new track. And now notice what's happened when I've done that, okay? I've added this to a new track. I've also already processed this sound pretty heavily by putting it into that repitch mode. But if I go into used files, I still only have this one file. So there was a time in the past when any process you would have to do, it would have to be like destructive editing, or you would have to make a copy of the actual audio file. We don't have to worry about that anymore. It's non-destructive. I can take this guy and I can option click it down to a new track. I can change the color. I can change the name. I can go into this thing. I can put it into stretch mode. I can repitch it. I can actually make the pitch change over time. I could go in. I could like chop this up a little bit. Let's chop it again at this part. I can do all sorts of things to this audio file, and it's always only listening to, or actually taking its cues from, I should say, the original audio file that's been dragged and dropped in here. So I'm not doing anything destructive to this file. We still have the original file. I could always drag back in the original file if I go too crazy with this guy. And let's go really crazy with it here just to illustrate this. Add one at the beginning. Like I can go really crazy with these sounds. I could actually turn this into a bass sound then if I wanted. It's not maybe the best example. Okay, I could maybe do that, and then I could pull this out. And I could change the pitch on this one. We could even do a little bit of like, you know, kind of like a pitch slide almost. So I can do all of these things to this one sound, and I'm only ever accessing one file. I mean, we take that for granted today, but at a time in history, this would have been absolutely crazy. Nobody would have ever thought that you could do something like this or that it would be possible. So back to what we were working on before, and this is where we're going to get into a slightly different way of looking at this, is if I take this sound, and I'm thinking, I want to convert this into a bass sound. What I actually have to do in this case, because I've repitched from the beginning, is I'm going to bounce this guy out. So now when I bounce it, what it's going to do is it's going to create a new audio file. Okay? So it's created this audio file down here. Sometimes this doesn't work on the first go. This time it did, luckily. And so I can get rid of this now. So now we have two different audio files, but I can go into this one, and now I can actually stretch this. So I can make the pitching algorithm work a little bit more in the way I'd want it to. And now all I really have to do is like shape the audio envelope on this thing. should say amplitude envelope, right? So let's actually get it more of like this immediate hit at the start. Then do something. We could even add a little bit of like a pitch move to it. Let's have it rise in pitch. Okay, that's kind of cool. And then if we want to go even crazier, we can always consolidate this, drag it out. A little bit of like a bass loop, using just that one individual sample there. And again, this is all basically non-destructive what we're doing here. We only are having to ever use 2 audio files, and yet we're getting all of this variation right here. And in a lot of ways, this is actually more powerful than a physical instrument sampler if you just use your imagination and spend a little bit of time with that. So definitely use your own DAW, bring in a couple of samples, and see what you can do with the audio editing tools that are available in your program.